Okay, we're back for another Jersey Swap podcast. My name is Jeff Tebbets. With me, as always, is my tuxedo cat, Gary, back there. He's very
Hi,
interested in the
Gary.
conversation right now. Last week was not great for the Orange and Blue. 4-1 loss at Philadelphia on the road. Worst MLS loss under Pat Noonan since the 5-1 loss at St. Louis a few years ago. Still, it's early, and after that loss, by all means, they got on a roll and uh, they won they went undefeated in the next 10 matches. So we're not pressing any panic buttons yet, but we can ask the same maybe for our guests this week. We have Jeffrey P. Nesker, who joins us from Toronto Till I Die, from north of the border. Jeffrey, from a G to a J, welcome to our show.
It's funny. The only other G, Jeffrey, I think I know is the Toys R Us giraffe. So you definitely. I'm sure not the first time you've heard that comparison.
The story that I always say is it's either Jeffrey Chaucer, but
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
in all likelihood, it's Jeffrey the giraffe from Toys R Us, and I get different stories from my parents every time. It's a sore thumb sometimes, but that happens when you have a name like Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Anyways, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a while since we've had Toronto in town. I think they actually were like one of the first two matches that we played last year. And so it's good to see a familiar face, but also one that might not have changed too much. Maybe just introduce yourself to our public here. How did you get involved with soccer in Toronto?
I mean, I started working for Waking the Red, which was our SB Nation blog, about 2018, when I was, which is the tail end of our ascent into the MLS upper echelons. It just, I've always been involved in soccer, and I saw an opportunity to kind of make it a bit more pronounced than that. And I jumped at the chance, and I sort of haven't looked back since. I'd give anything, 2018 was sort of the beginning of the end of TFC's summit, like summiting the mountaintop. And as much as 2018 sucked, I would give anything to be there right now, considering the last 4 or 5 years this club has had.
I mean, we've seen that. We've seen.
I know I'm talking. Yeah, I know I'm talking to somebody that can understand. And let me be the first to say that it is so amazing that you have now gone from being the what not to do club to the what to do club, and it's not just it's not just our GM and gaffer that constantly brings up FC Cincinnati as kind of like a salve, like, don't worry, I know we were terrible this year, but like, look at how FC Cincinnati turned it around. It can happen. I think it's indicative, more so than any other team in MLS, whatever it is, 4.0, 5.1, whatever you want to call it. When we talk about parity, and we talk about how any team can beat the other team on its day, I think FC Cincinnati's a wonderful representation of that. And also, you mirror TFC in another way, which is you came into MLS already pretty well established in terms of your fandom, in terms of your supporters culture. It was a plug and play situation. Toronto, we didn't have a team in USL that was like winning championships a year before we went to MLS, but we certainly had a soccer community that kind of rallied around our MLS club and embraced it with the same numbers and the same way as your fandom did. So it's wonderful to see.
I mean, at the same time, I think we can always say that as much as we can push past the ceiling, we can always drop under a floor. I mean, we saw that a little bit with like Nashville last year, and
sure,
St. Louis came back to earth a little bit. So I think by being on the bottom and then seeing what the top looks like, I think we're prepared more for the future than if we had started on the top and then found what the bottom looked like.
The Atlanta United theorem, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think it gets any easier. I mean, TFC Live is a pretty nihilistic place right now, just simply because we've tasted success And so it's, like the history of TFC, we were the laughing stock of the league for a good decade after we came in. We couldn't do anything right. It was a revolving door of coaches. We tried everything. It was like throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. It's I lost my train of thought there. What were we saying?
I mean,
yeah. So what was different about that TFC being bad versus this TFC being bad is that, one, our wage bill was a lot lower. So it was like a group of plucky underdogs, the bad news bears. Can they do it? Can't they do it? Is very different than having, the highest wage bill in the league and just absolutely like lighting that money on fire. It's very, very different situation. So yeah.
I mean, I think you can also see it like as our wooden spoon years went on, we tried throwing money at the issue and hoping that would put out the flame, and it just fueled the fire instead. And but I mean, there's something to be said about pulling the plug on a head coach and then bringing in somebody. And in your case, that's a good transition. Let's go straight to the elephant in the room. I asked this with Philadelphia last week. I mean, there's a whole lot of maneuvering going on. You had John Herdman as head coach last season. He's out the door, and he's been replaced by Robin Fraser, who is a proven commodity. Yeah, he's had success with the Colorado Rapids as head coach. But maybe we can take this piece by piece. I mean, first of all,
sure.
Do you feel that letting go of Herdman was the right move? I mean, I'm going to assume yes.
I mean, there was no way around it. We don't know what kind of hammer is going to come down from FIFA with respect to the DroneGate investigations that he's been caught up in. We don't know what kind of muscles Canada Soccer is going to flex. They certainly had it within their power to ban him from coaching in Canada, which means he couldn't coach TFC home games. He couldn't coach TFC for the Canadian Championship. That was all on the table. So make no mistake about it. It was a you can't fire me because I quit situation with him. He wanted to control his own narrative. But in some ways, now that the dust has settled, I think the general consensus around TFC land is that it was the right move. Hindsight is always 20/20, but it was very clear last season that the air got knocked out of his tires. Like, one of the major complaints levied against John Herdman is that he's very much a cult of personality kind of guy, very motivational kind of guy. But when push comes to shove and you start talking tactics, he's found wanting. Now, whether you can apply that to the World Cup, which I think is unfair considering his personal situation at the time, he was half in that moment and half out. There was a death in the family that he was dealing with and all kinds of stuff behind the scenes. But with TFC, I think nobody can tell you what MLS is like. You have to see it for yourself. It's a gauntlet, and this applies to players, this applies to coaches. Certainly coming in from a national team, I don't think he was prepared for the realities of club football, and I don't think he was prepared for the realities of club football in MLS. And then strike three, I don't think he was prepared for how toxic and disenfranchised this locker room was. I think he had the best of intentions, but he's the third coach in a row that has tried to corral our DPs, and it just didn't work. We had that false dawn where Lorenzo scored a couple worldlies and won us 1-0 games at the top of last season. Ran into John Herdman's arms. The press conference, they were talking about how much they love each other. That quickly de-evolved. I think it was probably a blessing in disguise, because I don't know if that was sustainable what John Herdman was doing, and I don't know if he was the guy. Let's not mince words. Robin Fraser's a different bit of intrigue because it's a whole bunch of member berries, right? Mm-hmm. He was the assistant coach during our winningest time under Greg Vanney. Certainly, it's easy to deduce why there were some failures going on in Colorado. They sold out half of his players from underneath him. They did not give him the money he needed to replace those players. But it is always dangerous to play in nostalgia, right? It can blow up in your face very, very quickly. But if you look at our history over the last gaffers, right? Bob Bradley was the culmination of so much. Like when we signed Michael Bradley in 2014, even then we were talking about when we get Rob Bradley in to coach his son at TFC. So it seemed like the realization of a very long amount of planning, careful planning, and that went so piss poorly that, you know, we tried the opposite, like the young idea kind of guy with Herdman. I think Fraser represents a steadying hand. And we've certainly seen that writ large in the brief amount of time that he's been our head coach. I mean, you have to look no further than what's going on with Lorenzo Insigne. Now, if this comes from Fraser, if it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of the front office finally like hanging their hat on something, the moves that the front office have made in sort of removing Lorenzo Insigne from the picture, even though we're still on the hook for his salary, suggests that they've given Robin Fraser the keys in a very profound way and given him the ability to shape this team in the way he wants to do it. That can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, and you're leading it right to my next, topic. Really, I mean, when I mentioned elephant, I should have pluralized it. It felt like there's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up after the circus has left town, and that's Lorenzo Insigne.
Starts and ends with him. I mean, it's as simple as that. And it starts with him, and most of it ends with him. But
I mean, so the best case scenario is it just you cut bait by summer, and you sell you buy out his contract. I mean, what is the best logical escape clause for him?
It's late, and that's a problem. I think the club tried to move heaven and earth to get him to agree to a move that made sense for TFC. It's easy for us to sit in soapbox and say, yeah, buy him out, give him $23 million when he could sign a pre-contract and take that $23 million and then double it up with whatever salary he's getting in Saudi Arabia or something like that. TFC is going to take a huge PR hit if they haven't already for the disaster that this signing was. I think they want to insulate themselves from being rinsed as absolutely as can be in this kind of situation. It's insane to preach caution when you sign the guy with no performance clauses for an extended deal, but here we are. Now you're getting into the weeds, which is, when you buy him out, does that unlock that DP spot? Because if it doesn't, there's no point in doing it, right? So you're getting into the machinations of MLS roster rules and timing and that sort of thing. It's not a good position to be in. I mean, TFC has declared themselves a 2 DP team under the new MLS schemes with the extra Garber bucks. And you tell me how successful a team's going to be with one DP sitting on the bench, completely ostracized, regardless of who that player is. You need your DPs to be playing meaningful minutes in this league, or you're doomed. It's as simple as that. Right now I think it's a stalemate. I think it's a game of chicken. It has been for a long time, but I think as a consequence of going public, now everybody's wise to it's a game of chicken. And I think the club is doing the right thing by being this absolute in their decision. And listen, we'll see what happens, because I don't know if there's a very real chance off the back of the game that we're talking about that we're going to head to our home opener with 1 point. Because we're going to lose to you guys. Well, that becomes a situation where will they hold fast to what they're doing, or are they going to give Lorenzo Insigne minutes simply because he's Lorenzo Insigne, and then we're right back at the beginning again? So I think that's the meaning of the season. Like, it really is, because he's been holding our club hostage, and it's not just the locker room, it's fiscally as well. The purse strings are closed. So much money is wrapped up in that deal. The club can't do anything else. All of our other deals are plans Bs because we couldn't get him out. Now, I do think they were good deals. I think TFC is really smart right now doing these loan deals for 1 year with a purchase option. It's the complete opposite of giving somebody your entire GDP for a contract that goes as long as they decide to. So yeah, but it can't be ignored. Lorenzo Insigne is in the way. He's in this club's way right now.
And I can also see, just with the whole 2 DP setup, I think what that does is if you remove one of them, it puts all the pressure and all the onus on the other DP, Federico Bernardeschi, who
Mm-hmm.
is,
Yep.
the self-appointed leader, I guess you could say, of this team.
And he's used to it. He's had the pressure put on his shoulders now for the lion's share of his time in Toronto.
Yeah. And so really how can I say this?
Mm.
When you're talking about all of the loans that had come through. I mean, there's a lot of names that I'm, circling here that really don't jump out to me. They're names that aren't as common. I mean, Zane Monlouis, who I believe has been transferred from Arsenal, still young,
Yes.
but
Yep.
probably unproven in any level, to be honest.
He captained the Arsenal under-21 team.
Mhm.
The scuttlebutt coming out of Arsenal. I'm also an Arsenal fan, but the scuttlebutt, as soon as we brought pen to paper and made it official, was he's not cracking the first team anytime soon. Obviously, you're talking about Saliba and Gabriel. There's not a lot of defenders of any pedigree that are going to crack that center back pairing when they're healthy. But this is pretty standard for European teams of the level of Arsenal. There's far too many players in their academy that can get first team minutes. They're not, by no fault of their own, they might not be the guys that get promoted. I think it's a really smart play to bring them into MLS, especially at this age when the league is emphasizing bringing them in at this level. You get the roster relief and you get to take a flyer on someone that could end up being a foundational piece of your team for multiple years. We're not just talking about like a win now mentality. We're talking about building the spine of the team. He's got great pedigree. It cannot be denied. My personal issue is that TFC has a nasty habit of blocking our own academy. And if you listen to, Matty Doyle said it best, I think, on Soccer Wise. A lot of people that are wise to the GTA, which is the Greater Toronto Area, often bring this up. This is a hotbed of talent, right? Yeah. Like, if you look at the Canadian men's national team, I think 90% of them grew up in and around the Greater Toronto Area. Some of them had a cup of coffee at TFC. Some of them came through the ranks and just couldn't crack the first team. Some of them, but it's a lot. TFC misses the target often. We have a very good crop of center backs that are coming up through the academy, Adam Perlman and Lazar Stefanovic, and both of them are now blocked in their development by this Arsenal guy that we brought in.
Yeah.
So there is an issue there in that it's like a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush kind of situation. The verdict's still out, but I don't like that it blocks the development pathways of our national players, our domestic players.
Well, let's take a look at some of the other additions that Toronto has brought in. Not only through the academy, there's been a lot coming up, tons of, I think 11 products actually coming up from TFC2 onto the main roster. But you also have a few loans that have come through. Any names that really move the needle in terms of additions to this team?
Yeah, listen, Theo's been interesting. He is a Canadian men's national team player. He's a little bit out of favor and has been on kind of a lone adventure all around Europe. He's definitely talented, but he's a bit of a selfish player and he needs to get out of that mindset yesterday. But it's an undeniable talent, and TFC has succeeded mostly. You look at the Sebastian Giovincos, you look at the Josie Altidores, you look at the Michael Bradleys. Our greatest successes are people that are coming here with a chip on their shoulder that want to prove that they can still hack it or that they can be the guy. So Theo is a reclamation project. It's important for Canadian clubs to have national team players on their roster. He's rusty and he gives us all hives right now, but it's certainly an exciting signing. Ulla Brynhildsen, if you were unlucky enough to watch TFC's, who were we playing against our last game? I can't remember now.
Orlando.
Orlando. Yeah, our absolute mollywhopping by Orlando. The MLS commentators were saying what TFC fans have been saying for years now. The game and our plan, what looked like to be our tactical news, was screaming for a proper number 9, a center forward. So here comes Ulla. He's got some pedigree. We saw limited minutes. I think he had his debut in the Orlando game, and he looked good out there. So we're looking forward to seeing him potentially start versus you guys and getting a proper run out for 90 minutes and then seeing what we've got with this guy. Certainly anytime you mention Di Rosario, he's a TFC legend, a Canadian soccer legend. His son, Adisa, is coming in as a goalkeeper on our roster. I don't think Adisa is going to see a lot of minutes outside of training because behind Sean Johnson is Luka Gavrin. He's absolutely next in line to take the number 1 spot. But it's certainly an upgrade on Greg Ranjit Singh, who was absolutely terrible. So, in terms of, it's a very light list of additions. And when you talk about the TFC2 products, I see that number 11. It makes me sad because we have a nasty habit of not promoting TFC2 players to the first team or using them sparingly when other guys get injured, not giving them regular reps. And there's an expiry date on the MLS Next players. At a certain point, they're going to go elsewhere if they're not getting a sniff here. So, yeah, it's a lot of products coming into TFC2. I hope that Robin Fraser and his new support staff are able to kind of streamline that process so that they're not just warm bodies for training, and that's all we ever see of them.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're also going to start seeing at FCC2. I think we've identified the people that we really want to bring up and give them some extra time. But we also saw that last season, and now those players have ventured on. Kimi Ordonez and Malik Pinto have left the team, and now they're being filled in by the FCC2 names that we feel could do something. Stefan Shirala, Kenji Mbamadem. I feel that these are names that are going to start supplanting some of the known names that we have there. It's just a matter of, do they pull anchor at some point and opt for pastures? So I can definitely feel you from there. Let's take a look a little bit at what we think this game is going to look like.
Sure.
Like you had mentioned, the 4-2 loss last week on the road against Orlando, but the week before that, I believe it was a 2-2 draw against DC United.
United.
You are scoring goals. You're producing in the offensive categories. It's just a matter of the defense maybe picking things up.
I'm remiss to take much out of that DC game. Those goals were gimmies. There were massive defensive brain farts on both sides that equaled that 2-2 loss. I think the Orlando game's a better harbinger. TFC can cosplay as a competitive team to a certain tier, but we get found out against the big dogs. I do think Orlando is one of the big dogs this year. I think FC Cincinnati's a very big dog. I was lucky enough to watch your CONCACAF match last night. You guys look scary. I saw Evander live when he played for Portland, and I think he's 10 times the player now he was when I saw him at Providence Park because he's happy. And I think a happy player that isn't at odds with his front office, it makes all the difference. I think he's a crazy upgrade on Acosta. And your what is Togo? Your striker from Togo? His name escapes me now.
Kevin yes.
Oh my God, man, that guy is a baller. Oh my goodness. I just think there is a precipitous drop off between the quality of our sort of Island of Misfit Toys starting 11 and our bench players. We just don't have the depth. And I think you might argue we maybe don't have the frontline quality in our starting 11 to hang with the big dogs this year. Yeah. And that's just the reality.
We'll see. You take a look at really the starting 11 that could come out. Sean Johnson in goal. He's not getting any younger, unfortunately.
Worst save percentage in MLS, and he's had some howlers in the first 2 games. I certainly hope it's just rust that he shakes off.
He faced 4 shots on goal and let all 4 in against Orlando. I think Richie Larea, is he out because of injury? What's the news on that?
It's not as bad as Sam Adekumbe, who's probably out for an extended period of time for the Caps and is going to miss his call up for Nations League with the Canadian men's national team. The word out of TFC is that it's a minor issue, but TFC, I never trust the word out of the club until I see him lace up his boots and get on there as a starter or even off the bench. I'm going under the impression that he's not match fit. And that's a huge blow. Despite the fact that Richie's hasn't been informed since he's come back to us, really, and some of that's injury related. In fact, I would say it is injury related. So it's quite unfortunate that once again at the top of the season we're looking at an extended spell without Richie Larea, because he makes the team immeasurably better.
So it sounds like, I mean, we're going into this game a little bit negative, but I mean, it, I look at it as last year we went in thinking that we could school Toronto at home, and we laid our own egg. We didn't really have what it took to put any offense on the board, and I'm a little worried that we're still in that phase where we need to figure out how our offense operates properly.
I think that's fair. It's the beginning of the season. There's not a lot of teams, I mean, aside from Inter Miami, that seem to be finding goal scorers under every couch cushion. I think that that's the reality of how heavy of a preseason did you guys have? I'm not privy to that.
We had about 4 or 5 preseason matches, and frankly, 2 of them I thought were like 120 minutes worth of work. But a lot of it was also, I think, to see once again how FCC2 and the academy can fit in. While people like Sergio Santos and Luca Orshano were either figuring out how healthy they were or where their contract fit into the team's future plans. Both of those, it looked like, have been settled and figured out, and both got to play their minutes against Tigres yesterday. So they should be match fit. And I look at this FCC squad and say, it's time to be match fit. And this should be, I mean, I'm not tooting horns. I'm not throwing any celebratory parades here, but this should be a game where I think FCC comes out on top and comes out and proves that they belong up in the upper echelon.
Or a banana peel game for you guys, because we can still hurt you. Yeah. I mean, you are talking about potentially the first 90 minutes, full 90 minutes that Ula is playing with this squad in MLS. I think he's going to need a lot more than 90 minutes to build chemistry with this team. But stranger things have happened than a day. I mean, I'm thinking of Pozuelo's debut, where he absolutely atomized New York City FC. I mean, he was chipping Sean Johnson a bunch of times. So, stranger things can happen. But look, I have a feeling that Fraser's going to roll out a 4-4-2 again, which, Federico Bernardeschi was a wingback last year under Herdman, which was a little bit insane. He's a right winger. He's not a striker. I think putting him that high up the pitch is a terrible idea because he drifts. He likes to receive the ball in space, and in a 4-4-2 he doesn't. And the other head of the attack, he's played 12 minutes with TFC. So you're talking about the head of the spear being misfit toys. I think that will undo us. The fact that we still don't have a formation that works for our players, that a lot of our players are still adapting. I mean, I said this on our show. You can see it in our players when they're expected to make, split-second decisions. You can see the conflicting instructions from all the different coaches and all the different things we've tried over the last 4 years, absolutely nullifying that split-second decision, right? There's a slowness because they don't have the muscle memory. They don't know what their assignments are because they've got so much pinging around in their heads. So they need an exorcism. All of the other trigger points, all the rest defense, all of the instructions that no longer apply, they need to exercise them. And I don't think that they've done it yet. We've had a very light preseason that, like your preseason, was mostly about figuring out who's here and who isn't, and was mostly an audition for the new gaffer. But it wasn't a long enough time for him to establish what he wanted to do. In effect, we're still in preseason right now.
It sounds to me like a lot of this is going to be figured out, I think, once Toronto heads back home, gets the first home game. Welcome back.
I agree.
I don't know what type of crowd is going to be there or how receptive they will be, but it sounds to me like get through this, hopefully pick another point if you can I'm going to predict a 3-1 FCC win in this case. Everybody who is a Patreon member for Cincinnati Soccer Talk can go to cincinnati-soccertalk.com/support, become a Patreon, and predict this game. Jeffrey, what's the final score going to be?
I usually hate giving out predictions because I'm always wrong. I think I'm going to agree with you. I think 3-1. I'd maybe say 3-2. We might give you a bit of a scare. Yeah, I'm going to say 3-2, but I don't think we're taking this one. I think your quality, you know what, fatigue may be an issue. You did have a midweek game and we didn't. And you did feature most of the players that are going to see minutes. It's early enough in the season that I don't think it's going to be as big an issue as I'd like it to be for the sake of my team. But I do think that if there's a spanner in the works, it's fatigue on your end, and the fact that nobody rates us right now. So, no, there is no tape on Ula. Like, you guys have no idea how he plays beyond 15 minutes. There is the opportunity for him to put egg on your face. Absolutely.
Yep. We've been burned by those types of players before. Ty Bodibo, who put a hat trick on us last week. When we first met him, he scored 2 goals on us, and he's been scoring 2 goals, 3 goals on us every game. So to have that type of player come in and just mystify you, like an Adam Buxa did for the Revolution.
Exactly.
Like, Tsubasa Endo, when he was with TFC2, he put a hat trick on us in USL days. We couldn't figure him out, and we just had to throw everything, the kitchen sink at the goal. And
I remember that spell when he was absolutely dominating with TFC2 and just scoring like screamers every game. It was amazing.
And that was against our 2018 team that we thought were untouchable. But here is Toronto FC2 coming in and giving us a scare at home. I could definitely see a 3-2, maybe even a 4-3 game if you really want to reflect the past.
I don't have faith that we're going to win, but I would say there's not a non-zero chance that we beat you, just simply because of fatigue, maybe a bit of the element of surprise. On paper, I don't think we have a chance. We're still a little bit figuring it out here.
Yeah, well, that's why we don't play on paper. We play in the confines of TQL Stadium.
Indeed, yeah.
I do want to thank. We're at the end of our segment here. I do want to thank you for your time, Jeffrey.
Anytime, man. A pleasure.
I always open up the floor. Tell us what you're doing, where we can find you on social media, and what your website's all about.
Sure. So go to wakingthered.com. That's the former TFC SB Nation blog that still irreverently covers Toronto FC. And check out Toronto Till I Die, which is our show. We do it every Monday, probably every Monday of the season, although busyness, life sometimes gets in the way. That's what you can find me on. I'm on all the socials at Jeffrey P. Nesker. I mean, right now I'm raging about tariffs, so maybe you avoid me for a little bit. But
hopefully we can still purchase a few things. Speaking of purchases, any thoughts on the brand new red kit? I mean, it's been a while since I've seen a good red kit come out of the Toronto organization.
This is dangerous. You're stepping on a mine here, because the previous home kit that's quite infamous, the Onyx TFC kit, was designed by a friend of mine, a fellow supporter. It is the inverse of our championship kit. So if you look at the 2017 kit, compare it against last year's home kit, the color, it's the same pattern, but the colors are flipped. Then here, this is a fun fact. Probably the most coveted TFC kit is the 2014 away Onyx kit.
Really?
Well, we cannot do Onyx anymore, because right after that, MLS decided that Onyx is a Red Bulls color. So we've been fighting to get it back. This is the closest we've been to getting Onyx, and it wasn't good enough for the fans because it's not red enough.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm having a big problem with the price of it. Like, it's an absolute insane purchase now. Like, you're gonna have to mortgage your house for a kit pretty soon. Yeah. It's not as bad as the Windows 95 mouse pad that was on our last year's away kit. But certainly, like, compared to some of the other kits out there, I don't even know if I have a favorite. It's probably the Seattle one this year. That one's beautiful. Although the Whitecaps did put out a Black History Month kit that's absolutely gorgeous. I like it. I'm happy that I don't have to defend the previous home kit to a bunch of irate TFC supporters anymore. But you know, I don't think they'll ever shut up about having a red kit being the be all and end all of TFC-ness. It's okay. I haven't seen it in person yet. I'm sure I'll like it more when I see it in person. That's usually my opinion. I like the kit you're wearing. That kit's amazing. Nick Hagland's own, you know, we love Nick Hagland over here. Absolutely love him. I mean, we loved when you bought him off of us in, what was it, your first season for something ridiculous.
2019,
you gave us like hundreds of thousands of dollars for him. And as much as we love him, you know, we were happy to let him go. Local boy wanted to play for his local club for their inaugural season. We do miss Bamboozled. I don't know if he does that anymore, but the jelly bellied beans, the ones that are either good or the puke flavor, he used to do that to his squad mates on TFC socials, and he called it Bamboozled. So maybe bring that back, because it was really funny.
The thing he's known for more.
Oh no, he called it Bean Boozled. Bean Boozled. I'm sorry, it was it was a portmanteau.
The thing he's more known for is a different type of bean. He's in charge of the espresso machine in season play, and so
nice.
He's always been known for like setting that up for his teammates. But now that we're in the middle,
I'm sure he brews a good cup. I trust Nick with a cup of coffee. Actually,
hopefully he gets more than just one cup of coffee in this next game. But Jeffrey, I want to thank you very much for your time. I say this to all of the people that come through. Thank you, and also, you know, keep your kit clean. Let's do this more often, man.
100%. Absolute pleasure. I'd love to have you back on our show to preview when Cincinnati comes to TFC. So we'll discuss that later.
Absolutely. If you guys want to hear more of our podcasts, go on to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com, Cincy Soccer Talk at our socials, and tune into your latest platforms. We'll be there. Thanks a lot for your time, Jeff.
Cheers.